Stepping through the familiar door that brought back memories of childhood, the house felt different, quieter and somehow warmer, as I returned home from college on a peaceful afternoon. Ethan, my stepbrother, who is 19 years old and appears taller and more mature than I remembered, greeted me with a nonchalant smile. His words came as he tossed a soccer ball from one hand to the other. "Hey," I said, taken aback by his apparent change. While I was unpacking my belongings that afternoon, something changed. Our parents had departed earlier that morning for a weekend trip, leaving just the two of us. Growing up, we hadn't been very close because I was 3 years older and our lives rarely intersected. Ethan wanted to order pizza later, so he knocked on my door. I said yes when he asked, and before I knew it, we were lounging around the living room, taking turns cutting slices of pizza and watching TV. We laughed about old family stories, like the time we made a fort out of sheets and got in trouble for knocking over a lamp. "You were always causing trouble, so I teased you about being bossy." Later that night, he returned the smile that had been pervasive throughout their upbringing, making the banter seem as natural as ever. As I went into the kitchen, I saw Ethan cleaning dishes. Saying, "I got it," I stepped in next to him. "Forget being a visitor anymore," he joked. Nonetheless, I snatched a towel. Anyway, while we were cleaning, we discussed about his college plans. He mentioned his desire of becoming an engineer and creating life-changing products. "I had no idea you were that driven until I heard about his enthusiasm." "I take it you were," I remarked, and he shrugged. The remarks hurt, not because they were harsh but because they were a subtle reminder that I had failed to see how much he had improved since we had last spoken. When I awoke the following day, I discovered Ethan outside, fixing his car. Focused and determined, he wore his sleeves up and his hands were smeared with oil. I was taken aback by his seeming competence and stood transfixed at the window for a while. Upon noticing me, he let out a cry. After that, I joined him for an hour of laughter. As he showed me the engine in action, he clarified the sections that I had trouble understanding. His patience astounded me, and I nodded in agreement. We sat at the kitchen table that night, lighted candles, and played cards, when a storm blew in and knocked out the electricity. The gentle patter of rain on the windows and the comforting light of the candles created an inviting and cozy atmosphere. "I'm glad you're here," Ethan exclaimed in a loud voice. I, too, noticed that his voice was weaker than normal. After I confessed, I felt like I knew him again, after all these years. In addition to being my stepbrother, he was a caring, attentive listener and an inspiring role model. The subsequent quiet was not uncomfortable. Despite the rumbling storm outside, it was a pleasant indoors. Since I've been known to reach for a plate whenever you're cooking, I've come to appreciate this chance to reconnect all the more. He told me I'd become proficient at a shrug weaving since someone had to. This time around, our meal together felt more like a meal than idle chatter. Ethan wanted to know what I had in mind for my future now that I had graduated from college. I confessed that I was unsure, but I had invested so much time in getting a degree that I still hadn't worked out what to do next. He assured me with conviction that I would figure it out. "You have always had the necessary amount of stubbornness to get things done." I felt his unwavering faith in me after hearing his remarks. I had faith in myself and thought I could do more later that day. Together, we tackled a few tasks. Although Ethan insisted on carrying out the most of the tasks, I remained close by, taking solace in the relaxed cadence. In the midst of doing the dishes and putting away the laundry, we got into a conversation about relationships. Are you still seeing Ethan? I shook my head in disapproval. He didn't press for clarification, but I could see he was disappointed. Instead, he nodded in agreement. We ended up watching an old action film that Dad used to adore that night, and for some reason, his words meant more to me than any advice ever could. As the credits played, Ethan finally spoke up. I remember when you left for college. I could tell he was thinking about something because he kept making side looks at me. I felt a twinge of guilt. I'd never considered it in such a way. I'd been so engrossed in my own life that I hadn't noticed how much distance had grown between us. I guess I thought you'd forget about me. He spoke softly, and I looked at him in shock. Forget about you? You were always busy, he explained, citing your friends and classes. It was such a simple thing to say, but it felt essential. He grinned and said, well, you're here now. I explained that I didn't know how to stay connected, and he assured me that he still believed in Yuzen. That night, our relationship became even stronger. After a long time of feeling like I belonged not only as a member of the family but as someone Ethan genuinely cared about, I found a note on my desk that read, "Glad you're home." I smiled to myself as I carefully folded the paper, and the next day felt different, quieter, almost nervous. Ethan seemed distracted, barely speaking during breakfast. I figured he just needed space, but something felt off. By the afternoon he was still distant. I found him outside sitting on the porch with his phone in hand staring at the screen. Everything I asked, he hesitated, added, then shook his head. Just some stuff. With school nothing. Big. I knew it wasn't. Nothing. After some pushing he finally opened up. He'd missed a project deadline and it put him at risk of losing his scholarship. I should have handled it better, he muttered, but now I'm stuck. You're not stuck, I said, you're just overwhelmed. I can't fix it, he shot back, frustration breaking through. I've already tried. For a second I didn't know what to say. He wasn't just upset, he was disappointed in himself. Maybe you can't fix everything at once, I said carefully, but you can start somewhere. He didn't respond, but I could tell he was listening that evening. I brought my laptop to the table and started typing. Ethan walked past and stopped. What are you doing? Helping you, I said. If you're going to give up, at least let me try first. He didn't argue. Instead he sat down beside me. We spent hours rewriting parts of his project, tightening ideas, fixing gaps, and finding ways to improve. Yet he was sharper than he gave himself credit for, and soon he was leading away, explaining concepts I barely understood. By the time we finished, his mood had shifted. The frustration was gone, replaced by something quieter, relief. Maybe even pride. Couldn't have done it without you. You said you did most of it, I reminded him. Yeah, but you didn't let me quit that night. I caught myself thinking about how much he changed. The kid I remembered, stubborn, restless, always chasing something, had turned into someone who worked hard, cared deeply, and didn't give up even when things felt impossible. The next morning I found him pacing the kitchen, nervous. I asked, yeah, he admitted, but I'll figure it out. He smiled. I know you will. He grinned back, and in that moment I realized something important. Ethan wasn't just my stepbrother. He was someone I genuinely admired, someone who made me want to, but better too. Ethan's project was accepted and I could see the weight lift off his shoulders. He tried to play it cool, but I knew how much it meant to him. That night he seemed lighter, like he could finally breathe again. I owe you, he said. You don't, I replied. You just needed someone to remind you what you're capable of. For the rest of the evening, things felt normal again, relaxed, easy. I thought whatever tension had been there was gone, but I was wrong. The next morning I found Ethan unusually quiet again. He barely spoke during breakfast, just stirring his cereal in circles when I asked if something was wrong. He brushed it off. "It's nothing," he muttered. But later when I walked pee that evening we sat on the couch watching TV, but the air felt heavy. I finally turned to him. "Did I do something?" He blinked, caught off guard. "What, you've been weird all day?" I said. "If I upset you." "You didn't." He cut in quickly, then paused, like he wasn't sure what to say. "Next, I guess I just didn't expect this." "Expect what?" "This," he said, gesturing. "Vaguely, us hanging out talking, actually getting along." I almost laughed, but he wasn't joking. "I didn't either," I admitted, "but I'm glad we did." His expression softened, and for a second it felt like something unspoken hung between us, something neither of us wanted to say out loud. "You're leaving soon, right?" "Ethan, I know we didn't always get along, but I'm proud of you." He looked at me shocked and said, "Really?" I whispered back, "Yeah, in a few days." His hesitant nod indicated that he was still taking everything in. "Yeah," I said, "you've changed a lot in a good way." For a moment, he didn't answer, then he smiled, not his usual sarcastic grin but something genuine. "I'm proud of you too," he said. "You always act like you're still figuring things out, but you've got it together more than you think." The words caught me off guard, but I believed him. The day I left, Ethan walked me to my car. He stood there awkwardly shifting his weight like he wanted to say something more. "You're going to be okay," I said. "I know you are." "You too," he replied before I could get in. He reached out and hugged me quick, almost hesitant. "Don't wait so long to visit next time," he muttered. I smiled. "I won't." As I drove away, I realized something important. We hadn't just reconnected, we built something better, stronger, and no matter